Well, Merry Christmas Eve to all who celebrate. Which windstorm situation is most likely? Are we going to get on the side of the worst case scenario? Are we going to get the best case scenario where we barely see any winds at all? Or are we going to get somewhere in the middle? This video will be talking about that in addition to what is currently happening. I'm meteorologist Tanis Leach with this update. So first off, the National Weather Service's watches and warnings has not changed since yesterday in the immediate Portland area of responsibility. Wind advisories up from 7 a.m. this morning to 4 p.m. today. If you are traveling up towards the Seattle metro area, they have issued a high wind warning for the National Weather Service office in Seattle, and I believe that goes for a little bit later. They are expecting gusts of up to 60 miles per hour, citing the official National Weather Service forecast for Seattle. Moving on to our three main paths I talked about yesterday, there was the coastal or offshore path, there's the coast range or the valley path, and then there is the path, the Cascades or the east. If it stays offshore or just barely on the coast, that would produce the strongest winds, assuming it is of strength to produce any sort of pressure gradient that is required for a windstorm. If it is along the coast range or in the valley, I'd expect some gusty winds, but nothing close to anything that would be damaging. And then the eastern path, 10 to 15 miles per hour. With all three of these paths, I do expect a gusty easterly wind to form in the morning hours as this low pressure system moves up towards us before moving on out and killing the easterly gradient before the southerly winds arrive, if it is these two western scenarios. So in terms of the model comparisons, I've just compiled it into a chart here instead of showing you each individual models for the sake of time here. So for the higher resolution models, I have them on the left here. The general consensus is right in the mid 980 millibar levels, and the high resolution models are either offshore or taking a coast range path. Comparing it to the global forecast models, and they're generally speaking in the upper 980s with a few outliers in the mid 980s, and they're generally in either the coast range or the Cascades. There's only one model, the GFS-AI model, that is offshore for these global models. Now, in terms of the difference, the higher resolution models are generally 3 kilometer resolution, or in the case of the UW Wharf model, 1 1/3 kilometer resolution, in comparison to the global models, which are anywhere from 9 kilometers in the case of the Euro to about 15 to 20 kilometer resolution. And in this case, that's how much each grid cell for the models look. In terms of what is actually happening, let's take a look at the satellite imagery between about 8:30 p.m. and 12:30 a.m. For context, I'm recording this at about 1:15 in the morning, and this shows a not the best looking low pressure system I've seen, but it's healthy enough to cause some gusty winds, especially with how close it is to the coast here, and it looks to be going primarily north with maybe a slight tilt to the east. So that makes me less confident it is going to be a Cascades situation. And taking a look at the radar here, this is from the Eureka, California radar, and this is only a 20-minute GIF instead of a 4-hour GIF. Shows pretty healthy right around the core of the system here. Earlier on, I actually noticed some thunderstorms that were forming off this, and there's actually a special marine warning that was up about 10 minutes before I was recording this further south for possible waterspouts. So there is some convective activity with this. I don't expect any of that convective activity to be even on the Oregon coast here, but that's just to show that this low is strengthening about on schedule. I am leaning a little bit more towards the higher resolution models because they do ingest radar data versus the global models don't. Some of the higher resolution models don't, but most do. So, onto the worst and the best case scenarios. So, these were the three scenarios I gave yesterday. So, the worst case scenario, 55 to 70 miles per hour. Median scenario 35 to 50 miles per hour, and the best case scenario 10 to 15 miles per hour. The most likely scenario I'm thinking is going to be is pretty much a direct copy of the median scenario. About 35 to 50 mile per hour gusts, mostly about 35 to 45 miles per hour. I will note that this is a little bit low confidence, especially since all the global models are somewhere between in the median and best case versus some of the high resolution models, including the HRRR model, is leaning more towards a worst case scenario. Though recent updates, I think the highest I've seen in terms of an actual wind gust forecast would be 63 miles per hour that I've seen in the Willamette Valley, at least for the last 6 hours. And then also, if we take the strongest system that the model showed, which was a 983 millibar pressure system, in the perfect path, that would correlate to about 65 mile per hour wind gusts. Considering I'm forecasting for my best estimate 987, that doesn't seem as likely. So worst case scenario would be 60 in this forecast. So some other forecast notes: likely east winds early morning. I'd say gusts up to 35 miles per hour. Gusts will be more intense closer you get to the Columbia River Gorge. If you live on the west side of the metro area or the south side, you're not going to feel a thing from this. Or if you do, it's going to be very light. And because this is southerly, it would not do as much damage if it's 45 to 55 miles per hour like the squall line last week. Again, the ground being saturated will cause more trees to topple than comparable gusts in a similar situation. However, because I'm forecasting a median scenario here, I would say, just like I said yesterday, just go about your day as normal, just because the worst case scenario is technically still possible, even if odds have decreased a little bit. Just be prepared for anything to happen and just have a backup plan in case things do go sideways tomorrow. So on to our timeline, and again with Portland temperatures here, and since I'm now forecasting for the middle scenario, I will keep that for the timeline. So today in 2 hour increments, I'm expecting high temperatures to be in the low to mid 50s. Off and on showers, I think by the time you're waking up, that will be the highest chance of rainfall for the rest of the day. And gusts will be about 9 a.m. further south in the valley, slowly moving up through the Willamette Valley. I think by 2 p.m., the wind threat is over. I think further south, the wind threat's over by 11 a.m. for Eugene. So for Portland, if I'm just doing in both locations, South Valley 9 a.m. to noon, Portland 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. And then going on to Christmas Day, off and on showers, but they'll be very light. And in any given 4 hour period, about a 50% chance of rain. So on to the 7 day forecasts for Corvallis. Off and on showers the next 3 days with some sun breaks mixed in, and then drying out as we go into the weekend and into next week. So for all of you who have a lot of time off, it's gonna be pretty nice by December standards. So enjoy it. Same deal with Portland, though temperatures will be a touch or two warmer in general. So that is going to be it for this video. Since tomorrow is Christmas Eve, if this ends up being a run-of-the-mill windstorm or a nothing burger, I will not come out with an update. If it ends up being a worst case scenario, I will consider doing a recap on it. I might delay the recap because I am going to prioritize family as I always do on Christmas. And yeah, so for any of you who celebrate, have a Merry Christmas. I will catch you all later, and until then, stay safe out there and take